I used to think data would save me from bad decisions. That belief almost killed my company. In the early days, analytics felt like armor. Dashboards glowing with charts, funnels, cohorts, retention curves, all moving just enough to suggest progress. Numbers made me feel rational, objective, professional. They gave me language to defend choices that were actually driven by fear, ego, or convenience. What I didn't understand yet was that data doesn't remove bias. It amplifies it. If you ask the wrong questions, data will confidently lie to your face, while you thank it for the clarity. Our first analytics stack was impressive for a startup that barely knew who its real users were. We tracked everything that could be tracked because it felt like control. Page views, clicks, time on screen, conversion rates sliced 12 different ways. Every week we reviewed metrics, and every week we felt productive. But underneath that activity, the business wasn't getting healthier. Users came and went. Features shipped and didn't stick. And instead of asking whether we were solving the right problem, we argued about which metric mattered most, because arguing about metrics is easier than admitting confusion. The seduction of data is that it looks like truth without requiring understanding. A spike feels like success. A dip feels like failure. But startups don't die from bad numbers. They die from misinterpreting what those numbers mean. I learned this when we doubled down on a feature that showed strong engagement, but quietly increased churn among our best users. The dashboard said, growth. The email said disappointment. We ignored the emails because they were harder to quantify, and by the time the numbers caught up, the damage was already done. Data is only powerful when it's anchored to intent. Without a clear hypothesis, analytics become noise. Early on, we measured outcomes without understanding behaviors. We tracked what users did, not why they did it. That gap is where most startups get lost. Metrics tell you where pain shows up, not what causes it. They point to symptoms, not diagnoses. Treating data as answers instead of clues turns decision-making into ritual instead of learning. The turning point came when we stopped asking, "How are we doing?" and started asking, "What decision are we trying to make this week?" That shift changed everything. Data became a tool, not a trophy. We reduced our dashboards brutally. If a metric didn't inform an immediate decision, it didn't belong there. Vanity metrics disappeared. Conversations got quieter and sharper. We paired every quantitative insight with qualitative context. Numbers told us where to look. Users told us what we were actually seeing. What surprised me most was how uncomfortable this made the team at first. Data had been a shield. Removing it felt like exposure. Suddenly, we couldn't hide behind growth rates when retention was weak. We couldn't celebrate activity without impact. Analytics stopped being a performance and became a mirror, and mirrors are hard to look into when you're tired and under pressure. But that honesty saved us months of wasted effort and years of compounding mistakes. There's a dangerous myth in startups that more data leads to better decisions. In reality, better questions lead to better decisions. Mature teams don't measure more, they measure more deliberately. They know which metrics are leading indicators and which are lagging comfort blankets. They understand that speed of learning matters more than precision of reporting. They design experiments small enough to fail fast and clear enough to teach something unambiguous. Data serves learning, not certainty. Another hard lesson was that analytics change behavior whether you intend it or not. What you measure becomes what people optimize for. Track signups and teams chase signups. Track engagement and they chase time spent. Track revenue and they chase deals that may not last. None of these are wrong, but all of them shape culture. Founders who don't think carefully about metrics design end up steering their companies toward local maxima that look good on paper and hollow out long-term value. Over time, I stopped seeing data as the brain of the company and started seeing it as its nervous system. It signals pain, it reacts to stimuli, it helps coordinate action, but it doesn't decide where to go. That responsibility stays with leadership. Data can tell you that users are leaving. It can't tell you whether you should pivot, persevere, or walk away. Those decisions require judgment values and courage, and no dashboard can outsource that for you. The real power of data in startups is not prediction, it's alignment. When everyone looks at the same few meaningful metrics and understands why they matter, decisions speed up. Arguments shrink, energy focuses, analytics become a shared language instead of a weapon. But getting there requires letting go of the fantasy that data will protect you from uncertainty, because startups are built inside uncertainty, and the best data-driven founders are not the ones who avoid it, but the ones who learn how to navigate it without lying to themselves. And this is where the story tightens, because once you truly integrate analytics into decision-making, you reach a moment where the numbers point one way and your intuition pulls another. And that tension is unavoidable and defining. And the sentence does not end here, because it carries directly into what happens next when data and instinct collide. And you must decide which one you trust, how you reconcile them, and what it costs when you get that balance wrong or right, as the pressure increases and the margin for error shrinks. And the next phase begins without waiting for certainty, and you are forced to choose in that collision, because when data and instinct disagree, there is no neutral ground, only accountability for the outcome. And I learned this when a set of numbers told us to double down on a channel that looked efficient, while every conversation with our best users said it was attracting the wrong people. And the debate dragged on until we realized the real question wasn't which signal was correct, but which one we understood deeply enough to act on without lying to ourselves. The founders who grow into this phase stop treating data and intuition as enemies and start treating them as checks on each other. Data challenges your stories. Intuition challenges your assumptions. When both point in the same direction, decisions are easy. When they diverge, that divergence is the signal. It tells you where learning is incomplete. In our case, the numbers were right in isolation, but wrong in context. The channel converted cheaply, but it shifted the user mix in ways that diluted long-term value. The dashboard showed efficiency. The product felt worse. Ignoring that feeling would have been efficient failure. What saved us was slowing down just enough to design a test that honored both sides. We segmented ruthlessly. We tracked not just acquisition and activation, but downstream behavior weeks later. We talked to users from that channel directly instead of arguing about them. The decision became obvious once we asked a better question. Not, is this channel working? But who does this channel bring into our ecosystem? And what do they do once they're here? Data answered that. Instinct told us which answer mattered. This is the maturity curve of data-driven startups. Early on, data is novelty. Then it becomes authority. Eventually, if you survive, it becomes dialogue. You stop asking it to justify decisions you've already made and start using it to surface uncomfortable truths before they metastasize. You accept that not everything important can be measured immediately and that some signals lag behind reality. You learn to protect space for judgment without slipping into superstition. There is also a leadership cost here. When you empower data, you must also own the decisions that contradict it. You can't hide behind dashboards when outcomes disappoint. Saying the data told us to is a weak defense if you never question the framing. The strongest founders take responsibility for the interpretation, not just the inputs. They know that data literacy is not about SQL or tools, but about understanding causality bias and second-order effects, especially when the business starts to scale and small misreads compound quickly. In the end, the power of data in startups is not that it makes decisions easy, but that it makes them honest. It strips away comforting narratives and replaces them with trade-offs you can't ignore. Used well, analytics sharpen intuition instead of replacing it. Used poorly, they anesthetize it. The difference is not technical, it's philosophical. It comes down to whether you're using data to learn or to feel safe. If you're building now, pay attention to where you're using metrics as a shield instead of a lens. Ask what decision each number is meant to inform. Kill metrics that don't change behavior. Pair every chart with a human story. And remember that the goal of analytics is not certainty, but progress with eyes open. If this resonates, leave a comment and share a time when data led you astray or saved you from a bad call, and subscribe if you want more stories from the uncomfortable middle, where theory meets reality, because that's where startups are actually built.